ultimately all blockchains do the same. And so what differentiates an ecosystem at this stage in the game is not better infra. It's about whether you're putting that technology to a purpose. That's blockchain and AI in use on a mobile device, on an app that's on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And we're doing over 1 million verifiable tokenized transactions every week right now. And that is growing exponentially.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the ACC Podcast from ACC Ventures. Today, we are breaking down real-world Web3 with someone who's been leading the charge across enterprise, sustainability, and now at VeChain, the one and only Anthony Day. In this conversation, you'll hear about the 10-year journey of VeChain, how millions of people are already using blockchain without knowing it, why tokenizing real actions is the unlock for real-world impact. We'll get into some AI and blockchain for the future. But overall, I'm really excited for this episode. Been looking forward to it. Anthony, pumped to have you here. How's the day going so far?
Doing great, Stephen. Thank you so much. Second podcast of the day, so definitely well warmed up for this one. Really appreciate you having me on here and for the higher production quality that I'm used to. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. So for those viewers who do not know you, Anthony has loads of experience in the podcasting realm. Between LinkedIn, he's got a blockchain called Blockchain Won't Save the World podcast. We won't get much into that today. The focus will most definitely be on VeChain, but wanted to give that a shout out that Anthony brings a great deal of expertise into the world of podcasting. So be sure to check that out. But I'm going to throw it right over to you, Anthony. Again, for those who don't know you at all, who are you? How do you describe yourself, and how did you find your way into Web3?
Well, thank you for the intro, Stephen. I appreciate it. For those people listening in who don't know me so far, Anthony Day, my official title is the marketing director of VeChain. I've worked in and around disruptive technology and innovation for pretty much my entire career. I started off working for Michael Porter as a management consultant, learning the ropes of industries, growth, marketing, organizations. Gradually found my way closer to working in technology implementation, building applications, digital wallets, banking systems, payments rails, gradually deeper and deeper into fintech, and through fintech, then into blockchain with Deloitte, then IBM. And then the last 6-7 years of my career, I've been focused specifically on working with layer ones, Polkadot, Cardano, and Midnight, and now VeChain, in helping to consider all aspects of growth. So whether that's ecosystem development, whether those are partnerships, whether that's marketing, community development, but always with a focus on real world utility, right? I started out in building technology that doesn't get built if it doesn't have a business case. If you can't make a clear reason for why are you using it, how does it make a process or a system or a company better, you don't get the permission to do it. And so I try to bring the same practicality to Web3. I try to bring a little bit of a multi-industry practical technology implementation background into this, while still also trying to advocate for this is high-paced, fast-moving, emerging technology. We haven't solved all the use cases for this. The first implementations of the stuff that we build aren't going to be the best, but take the learnings and move on. Don't throw and bin out all the technology after one use case doesn't work. Don't write off any emerging technology just because one partnership didn't succeed. But let's be objective, let's be clear, let's understand the value that we bring, and let's not be so myopic as to think that blockchain is the only technology out there. Hence, blockchain won't save the world. The people who get to build and use technology do. And so that's the ethos I try to bring to VeChain, to Web3, and to the community every day.
Love that. The podcasting and just the overall way you carry yourself definitely shines through here. Some people, I feel like I kind of have to pull out more insight, pull out more wisdom, but already in the first 3-4 minutes here, you're giving us some really valuable advice and perspective that hopefully I'm really expecting you'll continue to weave in and out of our conversation here. But before we get a little bit more closer to VeChain, I just want to take one kind of like step back and ask you a question that I always kind of like to throw at the guests, which is, Anthony, now looking back at your life, look at yourself whenever you were a kid or a teenager or early 20s, like, were there any signs in hindsight that kind of make you unsurprised at where you are right now? Any hobbies or interests that you had as a kid growing up that really make sense in light of the career that you have today?
That's a really interesting question. because that takes you back, right? You get to think a little bit about who was I then, what am I now? As I said in the intro, naturally and through my work and through the things that I enjoyed doing, I moved from project management into technology implementation, getting satisfaction for building something that's real or something that people can use, rather than creating PowerPoints that people don't read and don't care about. Building something that actually matters, that has an impact in the world, I think is so much more satisfying and tangible. And so being able to work with technology was always, I think, something that I was directionally interested in. If I go all the way back, my A-level examinations or my A-level subjects when I was 16, 14, 15, 16 years old, choosing topics then, I chose geography. I chose computing, back when it was called computing, and business studies. And so having an interest in the world, computers, and I guess basic business acumen at the age of 15 was probably a decent precursor for the capabilities that fit into Web3. My undergraduate degree was logistics and supply chain management, which I guess is an interesting foreshadowing for the early enterprise use cases of track and trace, supply chain management, digital product identity that we saw in the early years of where VeChain grew up, right? The earliest proof points for VeChain's technology was in and around supply chain management, large enterprise SaaS type use cases, which remain true today. And that was the early excitement around it. So when you start talking about what's the value of process automation, what's the value to a business of not having to do reconciliation, what's the value of reducing counterfeit products in the market, these are all very clear business cases that from a supply chain perspective, from business perspective, I can argue it's not a blockchain maxi question. It's saying, look, I've got a technology that helps with that. And so in that space back then, 2016, 2017, 2018, clearly part of the story there. My postgraduate was in e-commerce applications, which was in the application of technology and how it actually impacts and transforms. Again, we don't call it e-commerce anymore. Maybe we do, but a lot of people don't. There's probably a dated term, but as I've got closer and closer, the signals were there, I suspect. But for me, it was always about building something that people value, as opposed to, some people have the story of, I read the Bitcoin white paper. I understood that I wanted to be part of a counter part of society. I didn't want to be stuck in the mainstream. I had this sort of crypto anarchist alternative view of the world. I'm excited by people who have that energy, and I love working with them. I love working with a global remote community of developers, passionate fans, investors, partners that form a much bigger whole. That's the broader appeal of Web3, is that this is not a cookie cutter. I worked at IBM for a couple of years, and that is a giant bureaucracy of a machine that gets a lot of very big projects done in the world that are very valuable and very meaningful. But it's done in an entirely different way with an entirely different energy to Web3. Having compared and contrasted the two of them, I'm incredibly grateful and incredibly lucky to do what I do now with the people that I get to work with, because you've got more diversity, you've got more reach, you've got more breadth, you've got more surprises on a day-to-day basis now than ever. So I don't want to call it predestined, but I think it's a gradual validation that the choices that I had made early still make sense, and that I get to do that for a living is a privilege.
Love that. Thanks so much for sharing. And you touched just ever so briefly on the past of the 10-year journey of VeChain, which we will get into here shortly. So setting the stage for that conversation here, I want to hear from you, Anthony. What does Web3 do well now, in your words, and where do you think it can help people in the real world?
That's a good one. So I think in Web3, we've demonstrated a number of concepts already that are proven, tested at scale, and that are irrefutable. The ability to have a shared ledger, the ability to run decentralized nodes on a network that can't be taken down, to build applications that people can use. I think we've established the primitives of Web3. I think from a digital assets perspective, Bitcoin has now gained widespread adoption, around being a digital asset that is valuable. And so we've kind of ticked that box. We've been through some iterations of tokenization of things. Let's call it, the tokenization of digital art, the tokenization of votes, the verification of actions and signatures from a wallet. The primitives and the things that we built in Web3 that are fundamentally useful, I think now are tested at scale, and also to a point where we can keep the user experience as close to Web 2 or what non-Web 3 natives are used to than Web 3. So we've built useful primitives and we've established a global digital asset. I think also along the way, Web 3 has demonstrated the ability to capture and bring capital behind ideas. In some cases, those ideas were ICOs and white papers that went on to become layer one blockchains. In some cases, those are meme coins that are where capital and community converge. I'm not going to say that meme coins are a good idea. I'm not going to say necessarily that they have real utility, but if allocating your capital to a cause and potentially gambling some gains against that cause is a thing that's interesting for you, cool, go with my blessing. But I wouldn't call that real utility yet. And then the ability then to fundraise and create a treasury around projects is something that I think Web3 has uniquely pivoted, as opposed to Series A, Series B, Series C type of concepts that we had before. Have we genuinely enabled mass adoption yet? Sort of. And I'll say sort of because I think there are a number of layer ones and a number of projects that are continuing to chase down the digitization or the tokenization of established financial assets. You can find 4 or 5 or 6 blockchain ecosystems that are designed entirely around capital markets, that are designed entirely around tokenizing cash, bonds, what are sometimes called real world assets, RWAs. And I think the interesting thing there is that we've also identified that banks are really happy to start building consortia around creating shared ledgers and may entirely leave public blockchains behind. And so the entire business case for blockchains that say we are going to tokenize and transform financial markets may actually find themselves disintermediated, which would be the irony of all ironies, right? That's sort of where a lot of the current interest and excitement is around institutions joining Web3 or the tokenization of traditional financial institutions, which again is a far cry from the early decentralized everything type of story. But then in other pockets, you're seeing actual utility derived from using the right number of Web3 primitives to do something a bit different. And this is where the VeChain story comes in, because I'm going to be bold and say there is practically no technical differentiation on the core primitives of blockchains, whether you pick number 1 or number 150 on the coin market cap list. There are ledgers, there are tokens, there are nodes, there are smart contracts, there are applications. They are appropriately decentralized. They enable a certain amount of automation. They have a certain amount of uptime, and the gas fees are probably manageable. Apart from that, whether it's more or less interoperable, whether it's more or less performant, whether it has or hasn't been down over the weekend, ultimately all blockchains do the same. And so what differentiates an ecosystem at this stage in the game is not better infra. It's about whether you're putting that technology to a purpose. And again, purpose A, example A, is the tokenization of financial services, which may or may not be doomed. I want to talk about space B, which is the tokenization and creation of new asset classes, of using Web3 primitives to transform the way some established concepts such as customer engagement, digital wallets, even sustainable impact are brought to bear. And that's what I'm excited by. That's why I joined VeChain. That's where I think the next material wave of mass adoption of Web3 is going to come from. Because we'll go and tokenize financial services. That's going to happen anyway. That's cool. And that will be some proof points that blockchains have been used after the wave of supply chain and enterprise. That's the next one up over there. But over here is some practical uses of applications that people can use every day that make use of crypto, wallets, digital identity, smart contracts, verification, open ledgers, digital treasuries, DAO governance, all together, but packaged in a way that everyday humans can use. That's where the good stuff is.
Man, talk about good stuff. If that was a clip from when you started talking to stop talking, man, so much good perspective and such insightful commentary was just provided from you there, Anthony. And I'm just going to take and run with the direction that you're taking this. I will do my best to wrap it back around after this segment here and do touch on the 10-year journey of VeChain, because it would be great to have that perspective. But you mentioned there at the end of what you're speaking about, just those real world applications. And from my perspective, just the level of disruption that a technology like Web3, speaking very generically here, has the implications on the world today. Not even bringing in the conversations around AI agents, but just simply put, over the past summer, we've seen a lot of development and progress on stable coins in the United States specifically. And I think it's becoming more clear that, no, simply put, blockchain is a really useful advancement of technology to the banking industry, how money has moved globally. So now I think the huge point that VeChain is really excelling in is, all right, great, you're going to do that in the banking industry. We already knew that this was going to be disruptive, and it was the next process for that area of this tech. So let's talk about what we can do now that is a completely new unlock. So I want to throw it back over to you. What is VeChain actually doing? What are they being used for in the real world? And you can touch on enterprise. You can talk about the consumer applications through VBetter. But I'm just going to throw it over to you. It's clear that you have so much to say, and it's greatly valued. So I'm going to keep the spotlight right on you, sir.
Appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you. I'll tell the long story, and then I'll dive in on some of the examples. And I may even show one on my phone if I can get around to it, if the screen allows me. But the long-term ethos of Sunny Lu, founder of VeChain, and the VeChain team for the last 10 years, right? 2015 was when the first kind of paper was written. So we're 10 years in concept, 8 years in mainnet. The inspiration for Sunny was to look at Ethereum and say, I want to build something that is usable by everybody for everyday applications, for everyday technology. The early areas that VeChain focused on were enterprise, B2B, software as a service type capabilities, use cases that involve shared ledgers, automation, and verification of data. As a lot of the industry was excited by at that particular point in time, 2017, 2018, 2019, big clients like Walmart, BMW, DNV, PwC, BYD, insert other acronyms here. But there are over 300 apps that were built on supply chain and enterprise tech using Ledger, or using a ledger and blockchain technology. That is a phenomenal amount of progress in terms of mainstream use of enterprise blockchain. And those applications are still running today. Those partners are still logging transactions to blockchain. The value to those institutions or organizations was clear then, remains clear now, that those are applications they want to keep using. And so that was the early proof points saying, right, well, in B2B and areas where a lot of the VeChain team had a lot of experience, we were able to be transformative. We understood the business case and we delivered value. The premise in the last 2 or 3 years has been to move that into B2C and to understand, how do we get useful Web3 technology into the hands of everyday people, everyday humans. I don't want to say everybody's grandmother, but ultimately everybody, in a way that helps them, helps brands, helps organizations, and also helps us to do good for the world. And so a big part of where VeChain is today is its technology with purpose. It's technology that is designing use cases that help people do better for themselves, for the planet, or for their communities every day, that uses the capabilities that I described before as Web3 primitives around a shared ledger, the ability to tokenize and verify, digital identity, cryptocurrencies to create and to distribute value in real time, 24/7 worldwide at the speed of the internet, not at the speed of banks. So we can have applications, we can have solutions that scale instantly, globally, in real time, and put that to good use. And so you can do that one brand at a time, but it's quite challenging because, as Polygon and others have sort of seen, you work with a Starbucks or you work with a Disney, they build something, they build a use case, maybe the use case is good, maybe it's not, maybe it hits the business case, maybe it doesn't, and then it falls over and it goes away. And so what we wanted to create was something slightly different in terms of an open impact platform that allows any brand to use the fundamental capabilities, like I said, the ledger, the tokens, the verification, a digital asset treasury, or a treasury that can allow users of the platform to invest and to be rewarded for building applications that people use. Back to the ICO Kickstarter model, right? The cryptocurrency part of it allows you to create a marketplace of everyday actions that can be valued. And so the market cap of VeBeta, vebeta.com, that's the platform. So if you go check out vebeta.com, on there you'll see 50 different applications, each one focusing on helping somebody do one thing every day that will help them to do better for themselves or for their community or for the planet. That might be using a reusable mug when you drink coffee, recycling plastics, cleaning up the beach, cleaning up after your dog and not leaving a mess for your community, moving, putting your phone down and being mindful. Lots of other use cases around supporting local, eating clean, reducing your energy or waste in general. Right? This is not all climate tech. This is better tech, hence vebeta.com. All of those applications make use of the treasury, have an audience of about 5 million people now, which is unbelievable. We have a number of apps, over 2 million users, which is, again, for a crypto app. I'm not sure how many other apps outside of some kind of basic DeFi stuff can say, we've got 2 million users of an app that uses blockchain technology and crypto every single day. Well, twice a day if you have 2 coffees. That's the limit. You're not allowed to record more than those 2. But every time you do one of those sustainable actions, you get rewards in crypto. It's not a huge amount, right? You're not making $100 a day. But for people, that is acknowledgement of the actions that they do. There's a cumulative effect and also staking that sits behind it in terms of those rewards. You're part of a community that is also helping to maintain the platform. So you've got kind of a feeling of being part of a collective, part of something bigger than yourself. Oftentimes, people doing good in the world will be limited by the fact that they feel like they're not being noticed, or like, who cares? Or why should I bother if it's not being recognized? This helps to push things further. And the exciting news, or the good news, is that that's not just for individual applications that have those solo use cases. This is technology that brands can use to leverage their customer base. This is technology that sports organizations can use to catalyze their fan base. That if you had, we partner with the UFC, for example. We launched an application in partnership with UFC called Build Your Body, which mirrors the story of a number of athletes in the UFC who were 300, 350 pounds. They decided to do something, just get up, start moving. And they've gone from being kind of overweight and unhappy to being more athletic, to even being champions in the UFC. And so we created an app that's on VeBeta called BYB that mirrors that journey. And so it rewards UFC fans and anybody for getting up and just moving a little bit every day, encouraging them to get on a bit of a fitness journey and to do better. It's not, you don't have to become a heavyweight champion, but this is about recognizing the little bits of good that you do every day. And that's an example with the UFC. We're talking to sports teams, major franchises, large brands that have hundreds of millions of customers worldwide, that if you have every one of those hundreds of millions of customers doing one thing for good every day, the cumulative impact that you can have on the world is significant. The ability for you to then engage those customers every day is materially different from a marketing and customer engagement perspective than you would have otherwise, because now you've got something to engage them with that has purpose, that has interest, that has rewards for them. It's not about just collecting points every time that you scan your card. You're contributing actively to a purpose of being part of something bigger. It also helps those companies or those organizations to grow the top of the funnel as people start realizing that rewards are available to them. If you look at the Acc Infinity story, you started having people in the Philippines starting to play video games for a living because they were earning more in rewards than they were from being able to do the equivalent local jobs. I'm not advocating for people playing video games for a living, although many people do. These are some of the transformative effects of Web3 technology. These are some of the capabilities that VeChain is able to bring to brands, to sporting teams, to the UFC, to others. And honestly, this is the clearest value add story I have ever been able to talk about any technology in my career to date, 20 plus years. It has never been as obvious how to add value to an organization than when I look at VeBeta and I look at the way that we can incentivize and engage folks, not just as a marketing and growth person, but just to be able to do something good, to do something better, and to have clear P&L uplift it's a slam dunk every single time I talk about it. I can't have enough conversations about VBeta to organizations out there because guys are like, yeah, I get it. When can we start?
Totally. And it just makes total sense. We live in a world where it seems everybody is vying for attention. Everybody is asking for you to consume some product so that, we can make some money out of it. And it really just flips the entire script. I mean, the implications, of course, being this is on a decentralized ledger. So the data is in the hands of the consumer, of the user. But whenever we talk about what VeChain is doing here, specifically with some of those items that you touched on, a phrase came to mind: earn it versus owe it. So a while ago, I did an initiative. I live here in San Francisco and just decided to get some friends to get together to pick up trash. And I won't go really into the details, but I had some pushback inviting people. Just I didn't make this mess, and it's just like, we know that you didn't make the mess. What this is, you don't owe it. It's something that we want to do as a collective whole to kind of help out. The context kind of matters, but I won't get into it because it's very tangential. But the idea here is pushing people to do things from a perspective of earning it, and as you mentioned, having that difference, having a positive impact on the world, versus, well, do I owe this to the planet? Do I owe this to the community? If so, if I owe you something, then let me do my due diligence and learn about this and learn about the implications and really understand if this is something that the responsibility kind of falls on me. So in a very unique way, I feel like some of this tokenization of real world action kind of just like cuts off the entire corner of slowdowns of, oh, let me trace this back. Let me look into different, lifestyles, different maybe diets. Am I really making an impact here? And just cutting all of that, even though it really does matter and there is that knowledge to be gained there. But some people might just skip ahead to the do good because maybe selfishly they want to earn. And is there anything wrong with that? I mean, in some context, sure, but in this context of giving back, of sustainability, of making sure that this planet is as efficient and green and so forth as possible, I think it's well worth the idea of maybe we don't understand why we maybe want to be a vegetarian or a vegan. Making some hints here, but I'm going to do it because I trust that it's good. I can't get into the science of it all, but I'm going to do it because, hey, I get to earn a little bit out of here. So I want to throw it over to you. Feel free always to comment on the commentary that I provide. But my specific question to throw back at you, Anthony, is how do you go about verifying some of these real world actions? You mentioned picking up after your dog. So is there some form of, I took a photo of some poo on the ground and somebody somewhere verifies it? Is it run by AI, or tell us how that kind of verification process looks?
This is the bonus round where we also get to say we're doing millions of transactions on a weekly basis using blockchain and AI working together,
Yeah.
which there's lots of AI chains. There's lots of people talking about blockchain for decentralizing AI. AI is an oligopoly, broadly speaking, today. So I struggle a little bit with the concept of decentralizing it or decentralizing that kind of capability today. I know there's a lot of people working in that space that are doing really interesting work. Back to what I said at the beginning, we're trying to build applications for people that are useful. You don't build an entire application on only one technology, blockchain or not, right? We use cloud, we use front end, we use mobile, we use IoT, we use sensors, we have desktop, we have mobile. Verification of things requires multiple technologies. So when it comes to mugshot, when I'm verifying that I've had a coffee from a reusable coffee mug, right? We use AI to verify that the image that you've taken is of an actual coffee cup. And in that coffee cup, there is coffee or tea in that case, right? So if I go to the mugshot app, I open it up right here. I take an image. I can't right now because I took a coffee a little while ago, but I take the image and that verifies what's in front of me. There's a model that sits behind that that's verifying billions and billions of variations of coffee cups and teacups, of plastic, paper, and then reusable versions. If it sees plastic or paper, it's going to come back and say, no, that's not a sustainable model. That's a single-use cup. You don't get the reward for this. Also, by the way, please try harder next time.
Yeah.
The same thing with Scoop Up. When you use Scoop Up, it wants to verify, okay, here I am. Here's the image of before. Here's the image of after. And it might be certain things from the phone, or it might be certain image from certain data from geolocation, whatever it might be, right? If you start going around taking pictures of all the dog poop and then taking all the pictures of it being in a bag, the model will be trained a certain way. And so that's the verification part. I don't need a blockchain for that, but I need to trust that the application is doing an appropriate verification to then say, okay, I can't spam it or I can't farm it, and that I can genuinely reward people for doing the right thing. That's blockchain and AI in use on a mobile device, on an app that's on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And we're doing over 1 million verifiable tokenized transactions every week right now. And that is growing exponentially, right? It was 10K and then it was 100K. Now it's 1 million a week. That's real world actions, real world assets, real world impact. That to me is probably the only major real world use of blockchain technology today. And I think it's hugely powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about ideas that can trend easily when it comes to bragging about transfers per second, transactions per second, or what other metric of blockchain people see all over the world. But then you pull out your phone and you show us a IRL. This is live right now. And yes, this is in fact how many real life transactions are taking place on it. And thanks as well for touching on that understanding there, how we verify these real world human actions, because there's another question about just if AI agents are going to depend on the blockchain in the future to verify and become kind of like this truth machine of verification, which maybe we'll get into towards the end of the conversation if we have some more to discuss in the corner of artificial intelligence, just being more specific there, asking about implications you have. But for the time being, wanted to rewind just a little bit here and make sure that we touched on all the aspects with regard to the 10-year journey of VeChain. You just gave us an awesome look of where VeChain is right now. Love that. I want to push further into it. But was that the mission from VeChain from the start? Obviously, you weren't there from day one, but what was the mission in the early days and how has that changed over the past 10 years?
Yeah, as you said, I haven't been here for the full 10 years of the VeChain journey, but the consistent thread has always been be useful, provide real world utility, support real world applications. So the 10-year journey has been kind of the first half, which was focused on enabling B2B, enabling large enterprises and large organizations to use decentralized technology at scale. We've proven that time and again, and that was our credentials, that was our opening in the world. The last 2 or 3 years has been more about focusing on B2C, building applications that people can use every day. We've got both sides of the house now. So the enterprise story and the large SaaS story will continue to be a big part of the journey. But we're now enabling brands and other organizations to use Web3 tech every day, to demonstrate that it's possible to have an impact, right? We're not a technology for people to buy into, make money, and then shill and sell. This is a technology that people can get into, be proud that they're investing behind an ecosystem that is having a positive impact in the world, and that everything that goes onto the vbetter.com platform, the community vote in. They look at it and say, yes, this is something that aligns with our ethos. This is something that genuinely provides real world value. That's the really exciting part now. And you nodded or alluded towards the AI agent story as well. That's the next horizon for us is, we've worked with large organizations, we've worked with individuals. Next, we're going to work with robots and we're going to work with agents, or rather we're seeing that starting today. I don't think anyone will dispute that AI has impacted people's lives on a day-to-day basis in terms of their engagement with search or their engagement with creation of content to some extent. That's prolific today. Having agents being autonomous and acting on our behalf, I think we've still got a little bit of a journey to go. But over the course of time, you will have agents interacting with your wallets, with your money, with your funds, with your data, and trying to find ways to maximize value for you and the world. That could be impact, that could be financial reward, that could be lots of different things. But if we look at VeBetter and VeBetter.com as a platform of applications, at the moment there's 50 apps on there, and you can open up every app individually, and you can go through that process, and you can go through your sustainable actions, log a meal that you've had that's sustainably sourced or locally sourced, go through and do your steps, go through and do your squats on the BYB app, charge your electric vehicle, and be rewarded for using a low carbon or a low emissions for mode of transport, or take public transport and log those journeys and so on. In all of those cases, there's a little bit of individual user interface that it's not a barrier, but it's still something that individuals have to do every day. That next horizon for us is trying to make sure that those applications, and particularly the vWorld wallet, where all of those applications coalesce, is as easy as possible for agents to use. We know that agents are probably going to be creating their own apps. We've seen with A16Z, they created a meme coin or a bot that created its own meme coin that managed to generate capital behind it. Okay, that's an interesting experiment, but it's not socially useful. It won't be long before we start seeing agents attract grants for building applications that are useful for people every day, that are able to create a legal entity, that are able to deploy their application onto an app store. And one of those 50 apps, or maybe 50% of the next 100 apps, might be agent derived. So we're getting into an interesting phase where automation of activity, automation of user experience, automation of interface is going to be dramatically different. And for somebody and people working in marketing, where for the last few years we've been fighting against bots on social, for inauthentic content, for bot shit posting, whatever it can be, right? They say, oh, we don't want the bots. Whether we like it or not, the bots are coming, and we're going to want them next, because they are going to be the representatives of individuals. They're going to be the representatives of those individuals' intents, of their funds, and of their communities. And so that's the next horizon that we're preparing for. So whether it's the vWorld Super App, whether it's understanding how to engage and make space for agents to submit proposals for grant funding, these are the things that we're starting to work with and explore now, which is super exciting.
We're talking all about sustainability here and, making sure that the planet is taken care of. But the, asterisk here is that everybody to access VeChain needs an internet connection, needs a mobile device. Some of these apps directly reward you for using an EV or something like that. But at the end of the day, is all of the tech that's really required to tap into this, because that all is creating a carbon footprint. So I love the fact that it's approaching the how can we do better, tokenizing the real world human actions. But my personal ethos is like, this is all like great and good, and it's there's a lot of crap in the world, all this tech and all this profit squeezing. And it would be great if we could go back to simpler times, right? So that's kind of my question is like, do you think that all of this eventually does lead to a more simple future? Or are we on an upward trajectory where we just have to face some of the realities of some of the downsides of getting this tech in people's hands if we want any hope that it will make a positive impact?
So VeChain is technology for good. We're here to have impact. We don't necessarily use labels every day like ESG or sustainability or UN Sustainable Development Goals and so on. We talk about impact, and we talk about the horizons in which we have impact, helping people to do better. That's not save the world. That's not a lofty, ambitious goal that is unattainable. It's about using technology for good and to make small increments of change, but to catalyze large communities to do so in a way that the top-down government-led rhetoric or fines or paying for plastic bags, these are initiatives that have been very visible, but have had less of an impact than we might like. And so, as I said, we're trying to create technology for good, help people do better for themselves, for their community, or for the planet, in whichever horizon is meaningful to them. Because the alternative is apathy and inaction, or making non-impactful, non-sustainable choices. Here you and I are. We are both on laptops or computer devices. We're both using an internet connection to be able to talk to each other, producing content that will be consumed digitally to other humans out in the world. Whether we like it or not, there is a level of digitization in our world that will persist. We want to believe that the energy sources for our laptops and devices are increasingly sustainable. We want to believe that the materials that are used for those things are increasingly sustainable. The great thing about digitization is it has enabled reach. It has enabled the ability for ideas to spread quickly, instantly, and in real time at global scale. And if we're able to capture the imagination of individuals around doing better for themselves, the community, or the planet in different countries at speed, behind big ideas with brands and organizations that are interested to support that and that people can get behind, we're able to catalyze action in a way that we have not been able to see from individual brands working in silos or governments trying to tell their citizens to do it or we'll spank you. This is the power of technology. I still want to believe that a number of the applications or the use cases are about getting out there and being mindful, Restify, getting out in nature, Stepper, BYB, using sustainable modes of transport, better transport, green commuter. These are applications that will, for an oversimplification, force you to touch grass. So we're not locking people behind laptops looking at digital ads and staying and adding screen time. We're just trying to encourage habits that help people to do better. I believe that that is a meaningful mission. I believe that's so far has been incredibly impactful. Over 5 million users on the platform today with modest visibility and just over a year of implementation. I think that's hugely powerful. I know we can do more. I'm excited to help us to grow a lot more. I think that in this case, technology is an enabler. It's not a hindrance. And we can still keep life simple and meaningful and still do better every day.
Perfect. Yeah, you kind of got me back. It's like, oh yeah, we're having this conversation through the laptop, through digitization for people to consume. And it's just the woes of existence these days, especially in a digital world. But I think that, the answer you provide spoke for itself. VeChain is here to help people do better, not let's save the world. Now, if maybe that someday that does happen somehow, and it's provable by what VeChain has done, or in anybody who's using VeChain or otherwise, then great, that's perfect. But that's not what VeChain is necessarily here to do. You touched on just these small increments of change, and my just kind of question has to do with the culture now at VeChain. Obviously, that's pretty much the tagline of VeChain itself, Web3 for better, talking about sustainability. So talk just a little bit about the insight at VeChain for somebody who might be interested in Web3, but is more interested in the real world use case and not so deep into the technical or development side of things. What's it like working at VeChain, and especially as marketing director? Honestly, it sounds like a challenging, busy job, but with a platform like VBetter, any one of these apps could likely fit under the umbrella of we'll talk about them, and in doing so, we will be marketing for VeChain. So it sounds like an excellent job, a great position for you, but I want to hear from you. How's the culture, and what's your day-to-day look like as marketing director?
So anybody who works in growth or go-to-market or community engagement has the easiest job in the world when you have amazing product and passionate colleagues. And that's the reason I joined VeChain a number of months ago. That's the experience that I get every day. I get to wake up in the morning, get excited about who I get to talk to, large organizations, brands, sports teams, governments, about vbetter.com, as I am about talking about product evolutions, communications, content that we create, showcasing the applications that have been built, the founders that stand behind those applications. Honestly, I love my job. That sounds a bit beaming and smug. I promise it's not a humble brag. My job becomes very easy when you have the tools that I have to be able to go out and communicate. The challenge really is trying to communicate it as far and wide enough as we can, because there are many blockchains. There are many more well-funded organizations than us in the world trying to capture people's attention, but there are practically none that do what we do. And that's the difference. What we need to do is to help people care about what it is that we do. While most of Web3 is currently excited by institutional capital, digital asset treasuries, and perp dexes that get to move tokens around and generate yield and allow people to speculate on investments of tokens that may or may not go up and down, that's all well and good, but no one's talking about utility. Very rarely do I have a conversation about, what is your blockchain doing? Tell me an application that you're excited about.
Yeah.
As opposed to, how much leverage can I get? Or, how much liquidity do you have on your platform? There are some necessities for blockchain infrastructure. I get that. But somewhere along the way, from 2018, 2017 to today, a large swathe of the Web3 industry got besotted by financial services and digital assets and banks and leverage and trading. And we lost the utility, build something people care about, have a profit model and a product that can be used by somebody other than the 100,000 angry DJs on Twitter, or a few people who made some money from NFTs that want to reinvest in meme coins. That's the disappointing and frustrating part of our industry today. Is I kind of go into rooms and conferences and I hear people kind of talking about the latest digital asset, this, and synthetic variations of tokenized this, that, and the other. It's like, I haven't had a 10-year career on Wall Street to know whether that's impactful or not. But I can tell instantly that these people have never really thought about an application that everyday humans can use. And I feel like VeChain are, at least in the top 50, one of a very, very small number, if not the only ecosystem that are talking about real world utility, that are focused on using blockchain primitives as widely as possible to create something that only Web3 can build. Because putting stuff on a ledger, putting data on a decentralized network is not transformational in and of itself. When we looked at the B2B use cases, having a single source of truth, having a trusted ledger and being able to connect to multiple parties and have automation around reconciliation, now we've got an application. Now we've got something people can actually use. That is an app. That is software as a service. That is useful. That is not putting data on a ledger. Right? Having a blockchain is not in and of itself novel. Being able to put technology capabilities together to create an app that will make money, save money, catalyze community, etc. That's actual utility. And I don't think there's another layer one out there that can talk about doing it in the same way that we do, with the same passion that we do and the same focus that has always been towards actual utility, applications that real humans can use that has an actual business case. And so that's the frustrating part of my job, is that maybe in our industry in Web3, there's a smaller amount of the audience that actually cares about this stuff because they're infatuated by the quick buck side of the story, or speculation is the use case. Speculation isn't a use case, it's a casino. The use case or the utility is technology that has value, that people can say, I saved or made money based on this, not just because I liquidated somebody who had some leverage. And so that's the remaining challenge for me. I have all the tools I need. I have my cup brimmeth over with quality colleagues, passionate builders, a great community. No one I've met so far was like, hey, VeChain, oh yeah, those guys suck. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, I remember VeChain. I remember from 2018. You guys had some really big partners. You guys are doing some really big stuff. It's like, yeah. And now we're doing something even bigger with vbetter.com and being able to build apps that everyday people can use every day, that has blockchain and AI, that's in the app store, that actually has purpose, that people can use, and that brands and large organizations like the UFC look at and say, yeah, I want some of that. That's the where we are now. So that's a little bit what it feels like. And maybe that slightly impassioned rant can give you the kind of, what does it feel like every day? It feels like rampant enthusiasm tempered with some frustration, but ultimately, I sleep very well at night. And the other final important part of the conversations that I'm having is that I don't rely solely on the Web3 native audience to have success with VeChain and VeBetter. In fact, we've proven over the last 10 years that actually our much comes from largely outside Web3, because that's the bigger pie. That's the much larger audience. There are billions of customers and thousands of organizations, public, private, sports, enterprise, FTSE 100, Fortune 500, that all have customers, that all have purpose statements, that all want to grow, that can use this technology. I don't have to mention the word blockchain once.
Yeah.
That's the cool part.
Totally. And of course, the majority of Web3 projects, apps, whatever they're building kind of stall after a few thousand users, and looking at the
or when they run out of liquidity.
Exactly. So looking especially at the broader timeline of the market, I think it's fair to say in hindsight that most certainly in 2021 was the peak of a bubble. And there was a lot of use case and ways that people could utilize blockchain. But as you mentioned, a lot of it really just boiled down to these crypto casinos, more or less. So that we have a lot of prevailing narratives in the world of DeFi. Of course, we mentioned stable coins already. But when we talk about what VeChain is doing, I think the main focus here, you already pointed out that you're aiming at much of a Web 2 audience. You mentioned that being the bigger piece of the pie. Do you think that that is one of the key elements that has allowed VBetter apps to break into the millions of users, tapping into these Web 2 audiences that already have, the visions and already have audiences?
It's a really simple story. I also want to caveat this by the fact that I want everybody to win. I'm not here to dump on anybody's blockchain or whether or not what they've done or the direction or the strategy they've taken is good or bad. I want Web3 tech to be used in mainstream as widely as possible. We've seen in 2025, we've seen a Web3 blockchain tokenization use case in practically every industry under the sun that exists right now. And that's the good thing. We have reference models from as far back as 2016, 17 on how to think about using decentralized technology for digital transformation, for growth, for P&L benefit. Somewhere along the way, the low-hanging fruit became digital first. Somewhere along the way, the institutional capital story became kind of the more recent focus. And obviously with the United States taking a bigger interest, that's driven excitement in a certain direction. But continually focusing on real world adoption and being able to prove technology that's useful, the world engages with apps. Whether you're a Web3 native or not, the 8 billion people in the world do not all consider themselves to be Web3 natives. They're not degens. The degens and the Web3 natives created the innovation, created the spark, the seed of what's possible. They created crypto kitties. They created tokenization of digital art. They created the enterprise supply chain use cases early on. IBM created WeTrade and TradeLens. Ultimately, they fell over because the business case wasn't sustainable on a private chain. But those use cases were proven. The value cases got us far enough into mainstream adoption as to be able to say, yeah, this can go. To be able to have mass adoption, right? Blockchain and Web3 technology does not have a divine right to adoption. But to get to widespread usage, you have to build stuff that's going to be used by more than 100,000 people. Unless you have a very niche, very high value use case. If you look at games, if you look at e-commerce, if you look at brands, the story is the same. If you're going to be successful globally and have the ability to reinvest in your business because you've made revenue, chances are you're going to need to either have a very expensive product that's going to appeal to a small number of people. If you're Ferrari, Lamborghini, that's okay. But this is blockchain. This is technology infrastructure. This is sort of the stuff that sits underneath applications. We are a proxy for cloud with some extra financialization tech on top. If you're not mass, it's not going to work. The business case, the number of transactions, that doesn't add up with 100,000 people. And so we have to build things that are useful for the rest of the world. If you don't have a clear path to that today, if you don't understand how you're going to address 1 billion people, it's not going to work. And having a better blockchain is not the answer. Telling people that you've solved the blockchain trilemma better than the next best layer one over there, or that you've got a layer 2 scaling solution with a novel technology that's got its own token, by the way, because that's how we fundraise. We don't need that at this point in time. We don't need more infra. We need applications that are actually useful with teams that can actually grow them, with user experience that is commensurate with applications that humans use on their phones today.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, you're probably not going to make it. And we've got a 5, maybe 10-year head start on the rest of the other layer ones out there. Again, I want everybody to win, but we are probably winning in this space more than anyone else right now, and long may that continue.
Yeah, man, there's just so much that you touched on there that I would love to caveat myself into, because it's just really resonating with me when it comes to my interest and excitement in why I'm personally even involved in this space to begin with. And, just generally speaking, it's to contribute to spread the word, to continue to having some sort of influence as far as my reach can go, to have some sort of effect on the change and where this is heading. But we are coming down to our final 5-10 minutes here and wanted to shift the perspective towards what's next. Of course, what is next for VeChain, what is coming up in the near maybe 6 to 12 months that you're really excited about. But also we mentioned earlier on about this AI and agentic web of the future, and would love your input, your perspective on that corner of the industry, we'll call it, and basically where you think we're heading in the long term with this tech. So I'll throw it back over to you before we kind of close out here, but take as much time as you need, and I'll be here listening and taking mental notes.
All right. So 3 parts to that. Where is VeChain going? Where is Web3 going? And where is the wider agentic web going? Let me take it in those 3 horizons, I guess. So
Let's
for
do it.
VeChain, we continue to ship. We continue to bring people to the vbetter.com platform. The Hayabusa protocol upgrade is coming out at the end of this year. That's really important for us because it's going to increase decentralization. It's going to bring a whole bunch of new validators to the network. You're going to see some surprising and interesting picks for validators as well. It's not going to be the traditional technology infrastructure providers or financial institutions. We're going to do some really exciting stuff around people who get to support the validation of blocks on VeChain. So again, we're trying to open it up. We're trying to take a wider perspective on who gets to be a validator on our network and how do we bring people to the VeChain ecosystem. So watch out for that. So that's Hayabusa towards the end of this year. That's going to, again, make a material difference to tokenomics as well and how people stake their VET and are rewarded for doing so. So if you're not already looking at how staking works on VeChain, go to stargate.vchain.org and go and check that out. That is how you earn rewards on VeChain through staking today. So that is kind of thing 1 for what's going on. Also, a number of exciting partnerships that are coming up from a VeChain perspective with institutions, with exchanges and exchange listings, and also with brands and apps that we want to put on VeBetter. So keep your eyes peeled on our socials for updates on that in the next little while. That's really cool. Internally, we've been growing the team a little bit. We've been uplifting our capabilities on the engineering side, on the protocol side, on the go-to-market side, on the partnership side. We've been doing really exciting stuff across the board with the intent of being able to be ready for a 10x market cap, right? VeChain's market cap's about $2 billion today. We're preparing for a world where we're closer to 20. And so a business with a $20 billion market cap has a protocol and a marketing organization of a certain size and caliber. And so that's part of my responsibility, is to make sure that our organization is ready to be a team of that size, with a community of that size, working with brands and global organizations commensurate with a $20 billion software as a service business, right? If you Google or you look at the Fortune 500 and you look at the size of the teams and the caliber of the teams in software delivery and SaaS with a $20 billion market cap, they are significant. So I'm not saying we suddenly become a 500 person organization overnight. We won't, but we're thinking about how do we keep our startup principles? How do we keep our agility, but use AI, use technology, use tools to help us to get leverage in ways that we didn't have before, where you can add agents and machines as opposed to adding headcount and cost. So that's the super exciting part of what's happening for VeChain in the coming months. What's happening in the wider Web3, I think we've probably elaborated quite well over the course of this show. Where are we in terms of narrative and focus? I think at some point in time, with institutional capital coming into the industry, not the tokenization of financial services use cases, because that's going to happen anyway. But I think if we look at institutional capital being a big part of the next phase of investment in Web3, with that comes a more discerning audience. With that comes more detailed due diligence. You don't typically find institutional investors focusing on what's the next 10x meme coin. And so whether you like it or not, I think that discerning capital coming into our industry is a good thing. I think you'll see a number of projects in the top 100 fall out because they're not able to sustain the pace, or they're offering, overly aggressive discounts on OTC deals to stay afloat while still not having the business model settled, or still not having their revenue generation model or their partnerships and growth model settled. I think that's the sad fact of life. You see that in the FTSE 100 or the Fortune 500. Companies fall out of the top 100 every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's the normal phase of things. That's the normal cycle of business. I think we're going to see the same in Web3. I think, generally speaking, we'll see progressive regulation enabling it to be easier to engage with digital assets. You'll see digital assets present in more places. You'll see the creation of new aspects of digital assets, like real world actions, and the creation of those marketplaces and rewards become more prevalent. It's not going to be only the domain of financial services anymore. You're going to be able to put tokenized and fractionalized digital assets in any application you want, providing you've got the appropriate KYC, or providing you've got the appropriate identity or custodial solutions behind them, which today are already in place. We don't need more of those. We have the right infrastructure. The regulation is on exactly the right pace. Could be faster, but ultimately we're going in the right direction to enable digital assets to be everywhere. That's not just digital asset treasuries for Bitcoin and Ethereum and VET. That's going to be for new asset classes like real world actions. Those can run into billions, if not trillions of dollars. And so you're going to be seeing the creation of, or the allocation of capital from enterprises, from institutions towards those new asset classes that will see entirely new industries around them. It should feel like everyday applications. It shouldn't feel like, oh, this is weird crypto stuff. I'm not sure if I understand this. That's not the point. The crypto is the technology that sits underneath it. The applications should be the things that we see on a day-to-day basis, and those should look and feel like the applications we use today. So I want to believe that we see that sort of direction of travel with the technology. We don't need more complex infrastructure. We don't need more digital asset treasuries. We don't need more tokenization of existing financial assets. We do need a little bit more regulation, but over all of this, we need more utility. And so that's, broadly speaking, I see the direction of travel for Web3. And there's a lot of positive in that story. Over the course of time, we'll see more agents acting on behalf of humans or even acting autonomously. And so the ability for agents to attract capital, the ability for agents to create businesses, the ability for agents to attract capital, create businesses, attract more capital, and then reinvest. Will we see agentic hedge funds? Will we see agentic VCs? Will we see agentic voters on DAOs? Absolutely, we will. And ideally towards the betterment. But ultimately, if the agent's goal is to generate profit, then we're going to see an interesting battle of leverage and investments and speculation. And hopefully we don't see the perpetuation of bot-led leverage trading as we've seen in the last couple of months and years. That would be a terrible outcome. I hope that we start seeing more also on the other side, where you see agents reminding individuals and humans, or acting on behalf of humans, to do better and have greater impact every day. That's what we're pushing. That's the agenda that we see. That's where we're going to be investing, and that's where we're going to be working with partners and founders on exactly that. So if you're working on impact technology, if you're working with AI and blockchain and you like the sound of that, please come check out vebetter.com. We have grants, we have a community team, we have developer relations. We have everybody in our organization focused towards making that future a reality. And if that's the space that you're building, we'd welcome a conversation with you, because the more we can enable people to build agentic technology that makes it easier for people to have impact every day, to do better for themselves, for their communities and the planet, the faster we move. Not just we VeChain, we everybody.
Wow, beautiful. Well, that is all the time that we have. So just give you one last chance here. Final message for the viewers, as well as where people can find you on the web, Anthony.
So people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm a minimalist when it comes to social media. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Anthony Day. I'm the guy that looks like this. For VeChain, you can find us at vechain.org. Also VeChain Official on Twitter, and sort of follow all of the various other socials around from the website and so on. VeBetter.com if you want to go and check out the applications. VWorld is the wallet, the super app where you can download. If you have one thing, if I have one ask for all of you guys listening in, download the VWorld wallet. In there, you'll get access to all of the applications. You'll get recommendations for what to do, some automation around completing your daily tasks and having impact. And if you get in there, then that's already a good start to start exploring the rest of our ecosystem. If you're a builder, please come reach out. We're always interested in teams that are looking to build impact applications that may benefit from VeBetter, from the Better token, and to be accessing our 5 million community. If you're a brand, if you're a sports team, if you're a governmental organization, equally interested in talking to you. That's our story. We're trying to do technology with purpose. We're trying to do blockchains with utility. I believe we've done a great job so far. I don't think there's anyone out there who's doing as much and with as much passion as we are, but there's still a long way to go.
Wow. Anthony, this has been awesome. I think the biggest takeaway here is pretty simple, that Web3 is really about making the right choices easier and rewarding behavior that kind of moves the world forward. It sounds like VeChain is really already showing the world what that looks like at scale. So for everyone listening, be sure to go check out these apps, try something new, and experience what this real utility feels like. Thanks for hanging with us, and we will see you next time.